What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why tomorrow is going to be another very important day as we have the FOMC meeting coming up, not to mention the PPI report. I'm also going to break down how Tesla's looking and some very important levels to watch for as we approach tomorrow. But before I bring anything down all this information, before I talk about what the news is saying about Tesla, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 6 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus 6 months of level 2 data. Putting in $25,000 or more guarantees you 70 free stocks plus 12 months of level 2 data. This offer ends in just 6 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla. So, looking at Tesla, we saw this thing underperform today compared to the markets. Let me just show you how the stocks looked. So, SPY was green, up 0.46%. We saw this thing squeeze quite a bit. It could have squeezed a lot more if we got an even better CPI. CPI was just as expected. And despite that, we still got a nice squeeze on SPY. Tesla ended up underperforming. I was hoping Tesla would follow the whole market because most stocks out there squeezed. Tesla was short of a squeeze and ended up getting a rejection because we had some bad news that trumped, its reaction, and this led to a sell-off for many EVs out there. So I'm going to break down what the news was just very momentarily. I also want to call out that when it comes to other factors, the IWM was kind of flat. The QQQ soared very, very nicely. This thing was up 0.8%, hitting 400. Monstrous bounce by the QQQ today. Apple was green as well. Nvidia was green. Microsoft green. Most stocks out there were green. Coinbase green. Amazon got a nice day. Meta, but Tesla came short because of some bad news. Unfortunately, I couldn't predict this yesterday. I was hoping that this wouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. Now let's break down what's happening with the data and etc. So with CPI, I'm going to be very quick with this. The data was pretty decent. Core CPI year over year was 4%. This was aligning with expectations. This didn't show a decrease though, so it's the same as before, which is not necessarily the best of signs. But what was good, was the fact that CPI year over year was 3.1%. That is aligning with the consensus and the forecast. So with the inflation rate being 3.1%, being as expected, that is a decent piece of news. And the market ended up pumping as a result of that release. But then with core CPI being at 4%, this was close to expectations. That, in my opinion, was just decent. It wasn't like horrible, wasn't that great either. So it was kind of mixed, but for the most part, CPI was as expected, close to expectations, yes. It wasn't lower than expected. If it wasn't below expectations, the market could have run even harder. But this was still decent, and this still incentivizes the Fed to continue to skip, which I think is going to be announced for tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow? Why is tomorrow such a big day? As a reminder, we have the PPI report, core PPI, and etc. all coming out an hour before the market opens. I'll be watching to see what this looks like. PPI tends to be a leading indicator of CPI, so watch for some volatility tomorrow morning. There's a good chance that the data is going to be decent, however, because all of the latest pieces of data on CPI and etc. have helped the market pump more, and I think there's a good chance of that for tomorrow morning. But later on during the day, I just want to call out that at 11:30 a.m. we have the 17-week bill auction coming out. Then at 2 o'clock p.m. we have the Fed interest rate hike decision coming out. We're going to likely get a pause slash skip by the Fed, and that's once again very, very important. Then at 2:30 p.m. we have the Fed press conference coming out. That's also extremely important. So during the Fed press conference, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. When Powell ends up opening his mouth, it's going to cause a lot of volatility for the market. So we'll be watching that very carefully. And don't forget, guys, at 2 p.m., we have the decision coming out. That's when we see the headlines and such and the economic projections by the Fed. And then at 2:30 p.m. is when we actually see the meeting start and Jerome Powell give his speech. This is all in Eastern Standard Time, so wherever you are, you can just make your adjustments. Get ready for some interesting volatility for tomorrow. As a reminder, the market is expecting the Fed to announce that they're going to skip, and this is already priced in, so this shouldn't cause the market to run extremely hard. The market might just kind of trade sideways even if this release comes out, but Jerome Powell's speech is going to be more serious. We're going to be listening to see what happens with the Fed's projections. Are they projecting some kind of like cuts for March of 2024, or is the Fed still indecisive? We're also going to listen to what Powell says about the current monetary policy. He typically gives a very similar speech most of the time, but I am concerned about one little thing. So, the one thing that concerns me a bit would be the fact that although CPI came out decent, core CPI was expected to be the same at 4%. The last time it came out, it was 4%. The consensus and forecast was 4%. The expectation was 4, and we ended up getting 4%. So my point is, it was the same as what we saw during the previous month, essentially. And this is very important because Powell could, say something that kind of shakes the markets because of that. I don't know if he's going to make a comment about this. If he does, this could be a little bearish, but that doesn't mean the market's going to like crash and just keep crashing. The market could get like a drop and then a pump back up later on. Anyways, but I just wanted to call that out. When it comes to Tesla, we had some negative news. We saw some analysts from Bernstein saying negative things about Tesla earlier. That news is still affecting Tesla today. Then we saw the Chinese registrations fall a bit, but Tesla is still on track for its record sales. So what does this mean? The Chinese registrations declined more than 10% from last week. They're basically down 12.5% to about 15,400 from 17,600. And that's not the best of news. Tesla still aims to deliver 1.8 million vehicles for 2023. I still think they have the potential to do so. And what's good about the data is that for Q4, the insurance registrations are actually at about 120,000 for the quarter so far. That's actually more than 7% higher compared to the same point in 2000. I'm sorry, for Q3 of this year. So it's some good news for them. Overall, the data is good, but we did see this week a little weak. So just the week was kind of weak, but the overall data is still strong and Tesla is still looking decent. Now, Tesla's volume is about 95 million, a little bit below average, so it's not selling off at high volume. And Wedbush is saying Tesla will outperform the markets. The price price ratio is dropping because Tesla's losing some relative strength, which is not the best of signs. And it has a tendency of being green only 48% of the time on Wednesdays. So we're going to be watching this very carefully. Let's break down some very important factors. So, as far as the market goes, guys, I think that there's a chance that PPI will be decent. The market may try to pop a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla tries to backtest this 238 resistance. I think we might see an attempt to go a little higher for the markets, which could drag Tesla up towards 238 or so. But then by the time Jerome Powell starts giving his little speech or whatever, he could cause the market to come back down. So just be a little careful with Tesla. We could see Tesla make a move back down towards 233, then bounce back up to 236 and close like that. Just be a little careful with Jerome Powell. I can't really predict the part during like FOMC, but I can tell you that there's likely going to be some upside approaching FOMC, at least for the first hour of the day. Then we might see some consolidation. Then we may see like Jerome Powell basically just take the mic and cause some moves. Once again, I can't predict what he's going to cause. There's a good chance he might say something about core CPI causing a little drop before the market comes back up. So that's what I'm basically seeing for Tesla. What about for SPY? Well, honestly, guys, I see something very similar. Wouldn't be surprised if SPY pushes even more and tries to make its way up to the 465s. But there's also a chance that it gets a rejection thanks to Jerome Powell during his speech, and he brings it back down to like 463.5, even like 462, just like this. We've had wicks below our support before it tried to go back up, and then it might just bounce back up and try to push back up again. I think ultimately SPY will still uptrend and make its way up to 467 over the next couple of trading days, but we might pop and drop with the Powell speech and then just try to make our way back up. There's a very good chance of that potentially happening. I think that the chart right now looks bullish as SPY has been pushing up. If we look at other factors out there, we're still looking bullish on the 4-hour time frame. I forgot to mention this for Tesla. Tesla's looking a little bit weaker on the 4-hour time frame. We're just barely holding above the 200 EMA at 235. And this actually aligns very closely with our moving average. So if you look at the moving average, it happens to be very close to that level. Let me just pull that up for a second. We'll be watching to see how this is affected. Never mind, my moving average is not coming up. It doesn't matter for now. But basically, just watch the 200 EMA, even your 200 moving average could be looked at as a support, that 235 area. We'll be watching that for Tesla to see how it holds, and that's once again going to be very important. Moving forward for SPY, like I said, I drew out this possibility just as a hypothetical in case Jerome Powell causes some kind of like drop and then pop. For the QQQ, it's very similar. So this has been like uptrending quite a bit, very, very nicely. We're going to be watching for a test of 400. Could get a little bit above it to grab some liquidity before we come back down to test this yellow trend line. Then once we test this at 397, watch for a little bounce and some sideways price action. We'll see if this breaks out. We'll be watching that for the QQQ. We also have 400 as resistance. We'll be watching to see if this ends up breaking. Uh, if anything, the QQQ is still holding up nicely. It's still looking very strong, but don't forget that this is going to be very important, at least for the time being. If this thing continues to push up, watch that 400 resistance and 402. We'll see what Jerome Powell causes. He could cause this thing to backtest its EMAs before coming back up. So watch and see this yellow trend line. Do we get a backtest of like 397 or so, or even below that during Powell's speech, then come back up? That I don't know for sure, but I think there's a good chance of something like that happening. On Nvidia is kind of mixed because what I noticed on Nvidia is that we're at resistance right here. Well, depending on which way it breaks, that's going to determine how Nvidia looks. Watch this resistance at 478. If we do break it, I could see it getting very close to this like 482 area and then rejecting during Powell's speech, coming back up like this. That is one possibility for the next for tomorrow going into Thursday, depending on how it looks intraday. It's also going to depend on what Powell ends up saying. If we reject from here, it's also possible that we don't even break out much. We just kind of like come short and we form like a double top and then reject here. Could we come all the way down to fill the trend line? It depends on if we get below 467, 468 or not. But I find a move like this very probable for Nvidia, a little drop during Powell's speech before an attempt to rebound by Thursday or so. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 468. If we end up losing it, then we're going to retest this trend line. But for now, we're just holding above it. So I assume something like this is more probable. I also want to mention that on Nvidia, the chart is not looking that bad. The 4-hour time frame is starting to cross over on the PPO, which suggests that it might see some more upside. So maybe making a little attempt to get higher towards 482. I think that's a real possibility. Could push up a little bit more and then make its way back down during Powell's speech. Powell might cause a little rug pull before we bounce back up. So just be very careful just to be safe. On Apple stock, it could push more towards the 195s. We have this gap to fill up here. Then Powell could cause a little downside. I don't know for sure if he will, but he could. We could backtest 193.5, then bounce after that and still close kind of green or kind of flat. This is just another hypothetical possibility with Powell. I do anticipate a push up towards this gap fill before rejection. So we'll just have to see how it goes. With that being said, guys, I went over the majority of the tickers I typically go over. I'm just going to be very quick for the ending of the video. For the IWM, make sure you watch that support right here at 186.5. We could pop a little bit more towards 188 and come back down to 186 and then try to bounce. Depends on Powell's. We'll be watching that as well. For Microsoft is kind of tricky. We're at 375. We'll see if we reject here or not from like a triple top. If we break 375, watch for a push up towards 370. 379 technically would be a possibility. It depends on if we break this resistance or not. We did get two to almost three rejections off 375 historically, so we'll just have to wait and see. For AMD, this thing has been pushing quite a bit. Watch for push up towards this like 140 area. It couldn't even get a little higher and then reject back down towards 135. But with that being said, AMD could kind of like pop and drop or just drop from here. Looking at the VIX right over here is looking very indecisive. I mean, it's just continuing to break down, not really giving us much of a decision. It's been kind of stuck in the 12s for some time, coming back down. It came back down, then came back up. Still kind of stuck in the 12s. Still looking weak, though. There's no sign of a major bounce. There's no sign that the market's going to sink yet. The dollar, it's starting to sink a little bit. It failed to break out of the 200 EMA. I talked about this as a possibility. So just be very careful. Coinbase could get a little pop. We're actually stuck at 143. If we break 143, look for a gap fill at 146. I think it's going to pop at one of those levels, then reject back down to like 130. This wick right over here to 136. So 143, then 136, or it goes a little higher if we fill the gap towards like 146 and then come back down. I see those as possibilities. I have a price target of 75 on Alibaba. I think it's going to likely push up higher, at least to the 50 EMA. But right now, we need to see it hold 70 for that to happen. As of right now, it's holding up nicely. For Google, looks a little bearish. I could see it coming back down towards 131. I could get a rejection here as we're at this resistance. So watch it potentially come down towards 131 and see how it holds. For Amazon, we're currently looking a little bullish. Looks like it could push up a little higher towards 148.5. That's a target to be watching for, but we'll see what Powell causes. Watch for 148.5, then rejection. And then we'll see if Powell causes this thing to come back down to 146 and bounce. 148.5, the 146s, then a bounce is one possibility. We'll see what Powell causes. Meta is looking quite decent, still trying to break out. We will see if Meta could try to make its way up towards this resistance around this 340 area before a rejection. But I think it could hit that imbalance. I think there's more potential for Meta to push up before we get some kind of rejection. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Sorry if this video was a little short, kind of rushed. I'm trying to make this kind of quick for today. Have a great day, guys. We'll see what happens in the morning. I'll be back tomorrow morning with more updates. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one very, very shortly. Thanks again, and peace out.